This is Bleeding Green Nation featuring Justin Goodhart and Alexis Chassen. Is it Chassen or is it Chasen? I've always actually wondered that.
Chasen, like you're running after something.
Chasen. All right, that's good. It's good to get that right. We are joined by Seth Goodyear, who is the Sports Information Director of Franciscan College and also had hired me at Penn State Harrisburg. And the main reason why we're here is we're going to do a fun little debate between an Eagles fan, a Cowboys fan, but also, and more importantly for me, an Ohio State fan and a Penn State fan. So, Alexis, if you want to take a couple minutes just to introduce yourself, and then we'll get to Seth.
Sure. I am an Ohio State alum. Both my parents are from Philly, so grew up a huge Eagles fan. And my dad actually went to Penn State, so the annual OSU Penn State game is quite a treat in our house. And I've been working for various parts of SB Nation for several years now. Started working at Land Grant Holy Land, which is their Ohio State site, and eventually was managing that, and then ran into, Bleeding Green Nation, and that's where I've been the last couple of years. And the Eagles won a Super Bowl while I've been there, so it's been pretty fun.
Well, obviously they did win a Super Bowl. It was maybe the greatest night of my life. Much to the chagrin of the Cowboys fan who we'll meet right now. Seth, why don't you go ahead and take a couple minutes to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Seth Goodyear. I'm from Bowling Springs, Pennsylvania, so right here in central PA. Grew up a lifelong Penn State and Dallas Cowboys fans, been attending Penn State games since I was about 8 years old. I've been fortunate enough to travel to 10 of the 14 Big Ten stadiums, something I love to do, get to see different places. Cowboys did win a Super Bowl in my lifetime. I think it's the first game that I ever remember watching with my family, because my dad is a giant Steelers fan, and he was quite disgusted that night. But I was 5. I don't know if I got that right. But
it's been an eternity since the Cowboys were relevant. Obviously, the Eagles have had more success. The Cowboys have more rings. That's at least what I've been told throughout my entire life when talking with any Cowboys fan. But with that out of the way, we can get into the first topic. The NFL draft, for those who for some reason wouldn't have noticed, took place over the past weekend. And the Eagles and Cowboys both made picks that I think got a lot of attention. So the first question to the both of you, after the NFL draft and the Cowboys landing players like CeeDee Lamb, and the Eagles then took Jalen Reagor at pick number 21 and also Jalen Hurts for some reason at pick 53. So Alexis, as you get the first question, who is better set up for success for the future now that the NFL draft is complete?
I still think I'm going to go with the Eagles. I think this season specifically, we have, the continuity of the same head coach and front office and quarterback. As much as people want to say a contract situation does not cause bad blood, I never buy it. And I think the Dak Prescott contract is definitely probably wearing thin on him and probably irritating some of his teammates too. Just wanting to have that stability at quarterback is obviously super important. I think the Eagles have a lot of really young, talented players, but to also go along with a lot of mid-range career players who are still there for the long term. Talking Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham. We still have a lot of our core players for at least the next probably 4 or 5 years. Hopefully that includes Zach Ertz, depending on who you read. And I think long term, the Eagles probably are still going to be successful, while the Cowboys may continue to struggle a little.
Seth, any rebuttal to that?
I do think the Cowboys are set up in a pretty nice position moving forward. Obviously, the Dak situation has to get resolved for that to go anywhere, and there's no running away or hiding from that. That Jerry's been traditionally pretty good at getting deals done. This deal has seemed to drag on a lot more than what I think it needed to. I think the CBA negotiations had some impact on that. But you look at a team on offense that is absolutely stacked. I think Blake Jarwin is going to be a hidden gem at tight end. He's athletic. He's explosive. I think Jason Witten, I love him, and he was an absolute great player, dropped a lot of key passes down the stretch. I'm excited to see how Jarwin will fit in the offense more and more. CeeDee Lamb is explosive. They're going to give him number 88. There's a reason for that. Great wide receivers in Dallas wear number 88. The wide receiving core should be absolutely stacked when Dak gets back on track. The team took Zeke in after he held out through camp. if they're willing to do that with a player that had some more of a questionable background, I feel like they're going to embrace Dak once he gets that deal done and comes in. Dallas moving forward has a lot of really great potential. I think the big thing that held him back last year and has held them back for a while now is, Justin, I am one of the most pessimistic Cowboys fans that there is, was the coaching. And I don't know if Mike McCarthy is absolutely the answer, but we're going to find out if it's an improvement. Every team talent rates the Cowboys to have some of the most talent under 25 years old. The potential is there. The linebacking potential is there. The offensive line has multiple Pro Bowlers on it. You've got potentially one of the top 5 running backs in the league and an explosive offense. So I'm expecting Dallas to continue to grow. Hopefully McCarthy will be able to lead them in that direction.
Well, I can tell you right now that Seth would have made a fantastic Eagles fan because he fits the description of being a pessimistic fan. And as we all know, Philadelphia fans love their pessimism. But excellent job, guys. I think that was a great start to this. And with that, we'll move on to the second topic. Speaking of Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz, there's been much debate between Eagles and Cowboys fans throughout the years. Who is the better quarterback? Who's going to be the better one when history looks back on it. But with that being said, both these quarterbacks have had fantastic, really singular seasons. Dak Prescott's rookie season, Carson Wentz's 2017 season. So my question, starting with Seth this time, whose season was more impressive, Dak's rookie year or Carson's second season? And also, who has been the better quarterback 4 years into their careers?
4 years into their career, I think when you look at who's been able to stay on the field, Dak Prescott has not missed a single snap except for by choice when they pulled him out in his rookie season for Tony Romo to play in the season finale. But he has been on the field for every single play. He's consistent. He led one of the number 2 offense in the league last year. His numbers have continued to trend in the right direction, especially once they got better weapons for him. I think Amari Cooper's taken a lot of slack for not playing well on the road, but he definitely was not healthy most of the year last year. Dak clearly has been better when he has weapons around him. I will give Wentz credit. I've said from day one that Carson Wentz is an excellent passer of the football. I think he's perfect for the city of Philadelphia, and I think he's a really great quarterback. I think you're trying to compare two really elite level players that are definitely franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. I think in comparison to their years, Dak was maybe not more impressive, but definitely more surprising. Dak was coming in, there was very low expectations for a 4th-round draft pick, and with a rookie team to come in and have that much level of success, take a team 13-3 into the playoffs, that was it. That impressed me. He went shot for shot with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he just wins games at the end of them, and he hates the Cowboys with a passion.
He does hate the Cowboys. This is true.
But, I thought he was excellent during that season, and I've continued to see that grow, especially when he has adequate weapons around him.
Alexis?
I think, like you said, both are definitely on their way to being elite level quarterbacks. And I think if Dak stays in Dallas, this is going to be a debate people have every single year. I tend to lean toward Carson Wentz having a better 2017 season. They ended with the Super Bowl win. I don't know that there's really anything more important than that. And even though he didn't get to play in it, he was definitely instrumental in the team being there in the first place. He had, the season. He finished that season with the best overall touchdown percentage at 7.5, and it was a really Pro Bowl worthy performance. He also, over the past couple of years, has really been able to bring up young, unnamed talent. Like last season, being able to win down the stretch. I think being able to put the team on your back like that. Dak is, surrounded by weapons with, Ezekiel Elliott and, like you said, just a host of people, Jason Witten, even though he had drops. And I think Wentz was really able to take a lot of that load, and moving forward, especially with obviously the team going younger at wide receiver, that's going to be really important. So my vote is Wentz.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. One of the best points I thought that could be made in that question was the talent level for Dallas versus Philadelphia. I mean, it's obvious that Wentz has worked with less. But regardless, Seth, great point in how Dak burst onto the scene out of nowhere. Very good job. to both quarterbacks in those 2 seasons. I tend to lean towards Wentz a little bit myself, if you can believe that, Seth.
It's fair. I understand. And I get a lot of respect for him. You know, he does do, in a way, like what Aaron Rodgers is currently doing, a lot with a lot less.
That's a whole different topic for a whole different day, what they're doing to Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. But, you know, one thing that both teams, I think, have both been very close at neck and neck when it comes to the offensive line. You think of Travis Frederick, Tyron Smith, you think of Lyle Collins even. And for Philadelphia, their Super Bowl winning line of Jason Kelce, Jason Peters, Elaine Johnson, Brandon Brooks. Which offensive line would you guys personally want? We'll start with Alexis this time. Over the next 5 years, who would you want to have as your starting offensive lineman?
This is really hard for me. I think collectively as a group, the Dallas Cowboys offensive line is a stronger collection of talent. I think the Eagles have perhaps more individually talented players, but they're also never able to stay healthy all at the same time, which has really limited, their production. And there's a point, last year it seemed like Carson Wentz was getting hit every snap and had literally no time at all. So it's really hard to argue that they're the better group, but I do think they have some of the better individual talent.
I'd be in agreement with you there. I think.
Yeah, I bet you would be in agreement with her there.
I think the big question is going to be, unfortunately, with Travis Frederick dealing with the autoimmune disease and electing to retire, which I think was 100% in his best interest. Hopefully that gets better. I'm glad he got to come back and got the opportunity to play one more season. But, you got an offensive line that minus him has Travis Frederick or Zach Martin, who's a 3-time All-Pro player and has made 5 straight Pro Bowls. You got Tyron Smith, who's an All-Pro player and made 5 straight Pro Bowls. The potential for them to continue to grow is great. Joe Looney stepped into that role years ago. I think the Cowboys have some young potential in a draft pick from Penn State. Sorry, a little biased there. In McGovern, who was, a solid offensive lineman. He moved around the offensive line in State College a lot as that group was rebuilding. I think he can bump over into the center position and really give them a nice boost. Plus, they drafted the center out of Wisconsin, so now they're giving themselves some options and some depth. They've had a 1,000-yard rusher for the last 5 seasons. They've been consistent in what you expect out of the Cowboys offensive line and being tough and opening a lot of holes to make it easy for good running backs.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. It's no secret that both Dallas's offensive line, I think, gets more notoriety necessarily than Philadelphia's has. But losing, it'll be interesting to see what they do without Travis Frederick. They seem to be just fine in 2018 without him. So I can definitely understand the bias towards Dallas's line. Now, now we're entering my favorite part of the debate because obviously we have an Ohio State fan and a Penn State fan. Seth and I have had many nights at Penn State Harrisburg where we would mouth off about Michigan State, Ohio State. So this is definitely going to be the fun part. I wanted to choose 2 teams from the past that were both very good but never ended in the ultimate glory that both teams have had in the past. The 2005 Penn State Nittany Lions were a phenomenal team that ultimately, due to a questionable catch by Jason Avant, were denied a chance possibly to go to the BCS title game. And Ohio State's 2017 season, they were phenomenal. Great comeback against Penn State, only to get absolutely shelled by Iowa the very next Saturday. So 2 teams that probably should have had better outcomes to their season. And I ask to you, we will start with Seth. Who wins in the head-to-head matchup, the 2005 Nittany Lions or the 2017 Buckeyes?
The 2005 Penn State team unfortunately lost to Michigan on the road after defeating Ohio State, who was number 6 in the country at the time. It was a surprise team. Penn State was 5-7 the year before. The year before that, they were 4-8. It was 2 of their worst seasons in program history. So they definitely turned it around out of nowhere. They were led by Paul Posluszny, who was an absolute phenomenal NFL player, did not get the credit he deserved because he played on very bad Buffalo Bills teams and even worse Jacksonville Jaguars teams in his career. I believe he had the worst luck of any NFL linebacker, but he was an absolute monster. Dan Connor, who played multiple years in the NFL, also in the linebacking corps, and young freshman Sean Lee, Dallas Cowboy, and one of my favorite players, came in the Orange Bowl when Posluszny got injured. The team went 11-1. They were averaged 421 yards a game. So not only did they have the elite level defense anchored, and I forgot to mention Tom Bahali.
Yeah, I was going to say, how are you going to forget Tom Bahali?
Tom Bahali, multiple year All-Pro, an absolute monster defensive end. Asked Troy Smith, he flipped him and stripped the ball in one play and just ended that Ohio State game. And as I showed Justin, there's a clip against an Illinois team where they just decided not to block a 15-year starter in the
One
NFL.
of the funniest moments in our time at Penn State.
It did not work out well for them, but they were an absolute phenomenal group, averaging 34 points a game. Outside of the Northwestern game, which they had to come back trailing late and convert a 4th and 15 with under 2 minutes to go to come back and win that game, the defense didn't give up more than 25 points to anybody, except for a 2-second addition to a Michigan game that should not have been added to the clock. A Mike Hart fumble on the last drive that should not have happened.
I have to interrupt. I have to ask, Alexis, are you aware of the controversial Michigan-Penn State game from 2005?
No.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, Seth, why don't you take a moment to explain what happened?
In the final, Michael Robinson went down the field to put Penn State ahead by 4, at the end of the game. Michigan got the ball back. They had a really nice kickoff to start off the drive. Mike Hart fumbled. There was no review because there was no review system in 2005. It was clearly recovered by Penn State. A couple plays later, Jason Avant made a catch that was, in his words, a catch with a wink. And in my opinion, his foot was out of bounds and it was no catch. And later in the drive, Lloyd Carr argued to have 2 seconds added to the clock. Michigan converted pass to Mario, I believe it was Mario Manningham on the last play of the game, with 1 second remaining to be the only blemish on Penn State's record as they ended up finishing number 3 that season. But that was their only loss. They were highly competitive in every single game, including the Orange Bowl, 4 overtime victory. So, it was just an absolutely great squad. It was a different era of football. Football has changed a lot from 2005 to 2017, but I believe that defense could control any offense. They were that talented.
Alexis, we obviously went over the normal 1.5, so we're going to give you as much time as you want, but go ahead, Alexis. I assume you're going to vouch for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do that. I don't know. It's just, like you said, it is a much different era of football, that's for sure. But the talent out of Ohio State in 2017, we're still kind of capitalizing on that. But it's been one huge NFL draft class after another. Excuse me. And in 2017, you're still, in the Urban Meyer era before, things maybe got a little shaky. So things are definitely trending in the right direction. I would be okay with never hearing the team Iowa ever again in my life. I still don't understand what happened that year. To just completely, dominate for the most part, and then to come up short against Iowa. It hasn't processed. And it's been one of those games that in every year since, it's like, don't let this game be an Iowa game. Don't, it's not a trap game. And Iowa, I think, will forever be the thorn in my side. But
fair.
Overall, you had such talented players, Dwayne Haskins, KJ Hill, J.K. Dobbins. The defense was absolutely stacked. That's when we had Nick Bosa and Chase Young. And I think the talent level, even though we didn't end up, finishing the way we should have finished, I think overall talent level has to be among some of, one of the best teams in the modern, football era.
So sticking with college, we, as the draft passed, plenty of Ohio State and Penn State players going in the NFL. 2 of the more notable players from each college, KJ Hamler going to the Denver Broncos, and J.K. Dobbins, please don't, family memory, was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, which I thought was a really smart pick by the Ravens as they get ready to replace a guy like Mark Ingram. So now that we know which teams they're going to be on, Alexis, who's going to be more effective for their team?
Obviously, I feel like it's obvious, but I have to go with J.K. Dobbins. He has so much experience learning under, elite running backs, and also being like extremely explosive right out the gate. Like his freshman year in 2017, he had over 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns, not to mention over 100 receiving yards. And in his freshman year, he was number 1 in the Big Ten with 7.2 rushing yards per attempt, finishing for number 9 in the NCAA. Like, we all knew he was going to be really good out of high school, but then he hit the field and it's like, oh my gosh, like he can actually contribute immediately. And when you go from Ezekiel Elliott to then Mike Weber, you kind of wonder what kind of back you're going to get or need. I mean, you had Carlos Hyde before Elliott, who was a completely different type of back.
Oh, yeah.
And J.K. Dobbins was kind of like the Swiss Army knife. Like, he can, drop his shoulder and just barrel through guys, surprisingly, for a somewhat smaller back. But he also can, like, hop to the outside and take it for 90 yards. And you're like, okay, that was fun. Like, so I think being drafted into the Ravens, I mean, yay for him. Like, he really could have an opportunity to, make his mark, get to work, and contribute right away. Obviously, probably on special teams, but the way that the Ravens are such a run-heavy offense, I wouldn't be surprised if, he was able to get a good number of snaps his rookie season. And I think with development, he would be obviously a different back than Elliott, but I think he could, really work his way up like an Alvin Kamara type.
Seth, KJ Hamler goes to Drew Lock. He gets, he's with Cortland Sutton. He's with Jerry Jeudy. Can he outshine the light that JK can have in Baltimore?
I think the world of both players. I've admired Dobbins since he burst on the scene, and KJ Hamler is a jitterbug holding a firecracker. Like, he is incredibly, incredibly explosive. I look at their situations, and if J.K. Dobbins would have been drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers is what I thought he was going to be, I think there'd be no question I would be on his side. I think he would take over as the number 1 back very quickly and be explosive. I think in Baltimore, he's going to be always play second fiddle to Lamar, and with Ingram there, it's going to be a while before. I think he will get carries, but I don't think he'll get – I feel bad for him because he had a share carries with Mike Weber when I thought he was far superior to Weber. I was happy every time Weber was in the game. But I think he's going to be in a tough situation there. And I think KJ is too, but KJ is a different kind of receiver. KJ can take the absolute top off of the defense. You get the ball in his hands, he's explosive. And on special teams, he will be their kick and punt returner, and he can go the length of the field in a blink of an eye. The kid is absolutely explosive. He's not as powerful as Saquon, but he's as explosive. He gets free space, he's gone. And, I think that will show up in those phases of the game. And I think with wide receivers like Sutton and Jeudy drawing a lot of attention, KJ's just going to be running deep balls and taking the tops off defenses.
That's why I wanted him in Philadelphia. So determined that he was going to be an Eagle. I'm so convinced he was going to be an Eagle. But, no, I really do think that both players are going to be phenomenal. I was a big KJ fan. I'll never forget he had that 95-yard touchdown against Ohio State. The game that they blew eventually, but, it's still – but no, I think the world of KJ Hamler. It's why it broke my heart when Denver ended up selecting him. We're coming down the home stretch. We're sticking in college football. Both teams, when facing each other, Penn State and Ohio State, have had their fair share of miracles. In 2017, Ohio State, like we talked about earlier, the big comeback win against Penn State. A year before, though, Penn State finally got back on the map with one of the most miracle plays that I had ever seen as a college football fan. So which moment in college football history would you say is more impressive, Seth? The kick, I always call it the kick six, or Ohio State's miraculous comeback in the second half?
There's no question. The block six or kick six was the defining play of that college football season. You look at Penn State, they were just kind of floating out there. They already suffered 2 losses that season, a tough loss at Pitt, and absolutely getting trucked by Michigan up in Ann Arbor. I thought Franklin was on the hot seat and maybe on his way out of State College in a year if he couldn't turn it around. And they just had hung in there like they had so many times in games throughout the Franklin's tenure. And the special teams have been atrocious in the first half. Snap over the punter's head for a safety, a blocked field goal early off of momentum first drive. And then you get the blocked punt, which sets up the field goal and to bring them within 4. and then you get the blocked by Grant Haley, or the block by Marcus Allen, scooped up by Grant Haley. Absolutely changed the program. They go out, win the rest of the games, the Rose Bowl, in 3 college football, the Power Bowl game. Sorry, I lost the right term there. You know, that game and that moment absolutely saved Penn State as they were continuing to build back from the sanctions. I don't believe they would be where they are without that moment. Ohio State's moment was great. You know, that was a great comeback for them, but they were number 6 in the country. Penn State wasn't even ranked in that game. Like, that was – nobody saw that coming.
Alexis?
Yeah, I definitely didn't see that one coming.
Not many Ohio State fans did.
Yeah, so, you know, it's like Penn State was the Iowa the year before Iowa was Iowa. So I'm going to go with, obviously, the 2017 Ohio State win. JT Barrett was, like, as close to perfect, I feel like, as you can be. He finished that game 33 of 39 passes for 328 yards. He had over 90 rushing yards. And the last 10 minutes of that game was literally perfect. Plus, then you had the Ohio State defense that stepped up and was finally able to stop McSorley and Saquon Barkley. Like, it was almost, it meant so much because, like, you weren't expecting it the entire game. I feel like it was like, oh, what happened last year is about to happen again. We're going to lose to Penn State. This is going to suck. And sure, it really set us up for the trap game, but I still think it was ultimately the better of the two, but sure, also because of the outcome. I also think it was just for Ohio State fans, it was retribution for the 2016 loss. I think it was also just a little. And I think it was really important for JT Barrett and his, exit from the team, like to really finish his career with that kind of comeback win, even though it was, not at the end of the season or anything. It was really defining for him. And I think there was a lot of debate throughout Barrett's career. The numbers were fantastic, but, every time he had the ball in his hand, you weren't quite sure what was going to happen. And I think that sort of tilted the scales a little bit more into the, oh yeah, he's, going to go down as one of Ohio State's best quarterbacks.
You want to talk about really defining players for both programs that are now in the NFL. Seth has the burden of cheering for Ezekiel Elliott. He was a killer at Ohio State. Now he's a killer for the Dallas Cowboys. And then Saquon Barkley, who we all have to deal with, being with the New York Giants, but hopefully Dave Gettleman continues to not invest in an offensive line. We know how great these players are. We know that they're going to etch their names in NFL history in one way or the other. There's 2 parts to this question. The first one is, which one was the more impressive player during their college playing days? Who was more effective, who was just a better player? And also, the second part to this, and we'll start with Alexis, by the end of their careers, who is going to have more rushing yards, Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley?
So I think for who was the better running back in college, I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott. I'm one of the jerks who wanted him over Carson Wentz. And I was wrong. I admit it. I'm kind of glad it didn't happen. But in college, 85 yards through the heart of the Alabama defense, there are not many players who can say they did that. And it will forever be it's the reason we won the college football playoff championship, like the inaugural one. If he wouldn't have had that run, I don't know, that we would have ended up with the ring. So I say in college it was Zeke, but in the NFL, I think Saquon Barkley is going to end up having more rushing yards. Like you said, I don't think Dave Gettleman's going to invest in anything for him, and they're just going to give the ball to him. 3 plays, and then that'll be it. Every time the offense is on the field.
Nothing Saquon.
No, just Saquon all day long. And Zeke, at least they have Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, and now you have CeeDee Lamb, and I don't know if Jason Witten's coming back, but he's not.
No, he's a Raider now. He went to retire in Las Vegas.
Yeah. retire, then he'll come back again because he'll try being an announcer again. That won't work.
Can't do that.
So I definitely think Barkley's going to end up with the more NFL yards. But I will say Barkley was definitely the better returner, in college. There was no one quite like, I didn't want to kick off against him ever. Like, no.
Seth, is it say bye-bye?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, I have never been in stadiums where every single person held their breath anytime that man touched the ball. He is the most explosive, dynamic player I've ever seen, again and again and again. And I'm taking nothing away from Ezekiel Elliott. He had an incredible finish to his career. Kudos to him for those last 4 games. I'm glad somebody beat Alabama because I can't stand them. I give Elliott a lot of credit for what he did in college, but every time Saquon Barkley touched the ball, and the things that he doesn't get enough credit for, especially his first 2 seasons, 2015 and 2016, the team in 2015 had 11 scholarship offensive linemen. Their offensive line was absolutely atrocious. They could not throw the ball because the defense was on top of, at that time, we won't talk about him, but Christian, because they just...
We're not going to talk about Christian Hackenberg.
No, we're not going to talk about Hackenberg. He's not worth talking about. But they were on top of him before he could do anything. And that dude was still churned out 200 yards in Columbus against Ohio State. He is absolutely elite. Ask USC's defense in the Rose Bowl. I could go on. His top 10 college highlights are absolutely unbelievable. If he was hurdling over somebody on a 3rd and 3 in Kinnick to save a game, later in the drive, juking Josie Jewell out of his shoes just to stay alive. He was everything. When it comes to the NFL yards, Saquon Barkley currently has 2,310 rushing yards, and Ezekiel Elliott has 5,405 rushing yards. Look that up. So I believe that Saquon will end up with more rushing yards, but that will be very, very close. But where he will absolutely destroy Zeke is overall yards. Him catching the ball out of the backfield and being that explosive. You've seen it in the NFL. He can just take on 10 guys in the defense the way Barry Sanders sometimes did and somehow make it through, and you're just in awe of what he's doing.
Well, that is the final question. I don't know if you guys would be prepared for this, but I was going to give Alexis, maybe a closing minute to discuss the Philadelphia Eagles and how they fared in their draft. You've obviously had your opportunity to maybe put your opinion out there, but overall, any closing remarks about how the Eagles did this so far this offseason, or really it is the end of the offseason?
Ultimately, I think they made a lot of questionable moves, but they kind of make sense. They had a very clear vision. They wanted to get fast, and they did. At almost every position, they took like one of the fastest guys still available. They took, 3 wide receivers. I like that they took ultimately Auburn's left and right tackle. That should be nice. I like having guys who are really familiar with each other. I think obviously on the offensive line, that's just going to help out. Especially because the Eagles haven't had maybe like the best track record. Like Matt Pryor still hasn't gotten a ton of time. You have Jordan Mailata, who we're hoping finally gets on the field, but don't even know.
Talk about Mailata.
So you have, guys who at least might be able to develop over the next couple of years and move around a little bit and see the field. I also really like that the Eagles chose kind of local guys, people who are really excited to play for Philly. They took a guy out of, South Jersey, people who are just really connected. So I think they may not have taken, what a lot of people would have said were the best player available, but I think they used kind of a new evaluation system this year and kind of chose a different type of player. And with Carson Wentz still being pretty young and now having this long-term contract, I totally get not doing a rebuild, but really infusing a lot of young talent. So I think, future is bright in Philly. I'll take it.
Seth, Dallas Cowboys fan, how are you feeling about this season, assuming that we get the season that we're hoping for?
Yeah, and I hope that football gets back on track. I'm not sure when that's actually going to happen, but hopefully it happens soon because I miss football already, and I can't imagine going a fall without it. Dallas, I think while the offseason is coming into a lot of teams, the Cowboys still have one big thing on their list, and they have to get Dak situation under control. I also do think that they need to – I think they have one more move left in them, because I do think they're going to bring in somebody with some experience to be a backup quarterback. We truly haven't had anybody kind of floating around in that backup role in a couple of years.
Andy Dalton is available.
Yeah, if New England doesn't gobble him up, I could actually see him being in Dallas as a backup. Not as a good option, but I think they have a little bit more work to do. They made them offense even more explosive. I like the draft pick of CeeDee Lamb. I like it more because I think that's who Philadelphia was going to take in 4 picks if we didn't take him. And I got to be honest, I think –
Whatever. We got Dallas Goedert, and Jason Witten quit on you guys a second later.
And that's fair. That's 100% fair.
Well, thank you two for being a part of this. Alexis, if you're interested, we could always find more people to do these with. I think it'd be kind of fun. That's ultimately up to you if you want to do that. Seth, thank you so much for taking the time. Hope all is well back home. I know that Tom and Candace are extremely excited to see this. So once this is put out, and by the way, the scoring. I don't know if you guys noticed, I was doing scoring this whole time. Right now we have and my decision is not official. It's going to be left up to the BGN community. Right now we have a score of Alexis with 19, Seth with 17. So as of now, Alexis is your winner. We'll see if BGN agrees with me or if they disagree with me. In the meantime,
I'm not winning that.
That's a disadvantage of being a Cowboys fan, so I would not imagine that you're in the good graces. Hopefully there's a lot of Penn State fans on BGN, though.
Hopefully.
In any case, I hope you two are staying safe. Alexis, I hope the baby is doing well and not causing you too much fatigue.
Yeah, he's sleeping, so I'll take it.
Seth, I hope that Catherine's doing great. And ultimately, I will talk to you guys soon. And, that puts a wrap on it.